Welcome to Bite Size Legal, where we tackle legal issues one bite at a time. My name is Drew Jenkins, and I'm an attorney licensed in Georgia and Alabama. And today we are taking a bite out of corporations. This is continuing our series of starting a business to ring in the new year. We have previously discussed sole proprietorships, limited partnerships, general partnerships, and now we have moved on to corporations. Now, the corporation is the first entity type that provides limited liability for all participants. So this is kind of a big deal because up until now, someone has always had an unlimited liability as it relates to the operations and the debts and the liabilities of the company. But with the corporation, we get to lock it all within the corporation, and it gets to stay there so long as corporate formalities are followed. So here is your big point number one. Your bite number one is that corporate formalities must be followed when dealing with a corporation. So what are the corporate formalities? If the courts are going to treat the corporation as a separate, fictitious person, separate from you, then you must also treat the corporation as separate from you. This means that you must maintain a separate bank account. This means that when dealing with the company, you cannot just be signing things in your personal name. You will always be signing them in your capacity as it relates to the corporation. You are going to have to respect the division between you and your corporation. If you can respect that division and you can make sure that your corporation is properly capitalized, then the courts, by and large, are also going to respect that decision. So I know that people talk about piercing the veil, and you may have seen that. So long as you are actually treating the corporation correctly, that's a lot harder than people make it sound. So bite number one, respect corporate formalities. The corporation is a separate person from you. That's why its liabilities are separate from you. But to do that, you have to also treat it as someone separate from you. The next point in corporations, the big picture is instead of having members or partners, we are going to call the owners of the corporation stockholders or shareholders. Depending on what side of the country you are on, they're the same thing. It means that in return for your ownership in the company, you are going to receive a certificate of some sort, be they shares or stock certificates, and that will evidence your ownership in the company. Now, we will talk in a different bite about the taxation of these. It's kind of important. But just be aware that your ownership is not going to be measured as a percentage basis. It's going to be measured literally by the number of shares or stock that you hold in the corporation. Number two is that the shareholders are kind of like your limited partners in the limited partnership. They are going to set the big picture for the company. Now, typically below them, you're going to have what's called a board of directors, and they are more or less going to be the captains of the ship. They are going to be deciding what happens on a more regular basis. And then below them, you're going to have your day-to-day officers, right? You can call them whatever you like. Most corporations refer to them as CEOs, CFOs, all the C-suite level executives. You can also call them presidents, vice presidents. It's entirely up to you, although I'm only speaking for Alabama and Georgia on exactly what you want to name them. Other states may specify the names of the positions, but by and large, it's not really going to matter. What matters is how the decision making is broken down. And so how is a corporation organized? Unlike with your partnerships, you're not going to have a partnership agreement. You're not going to have a corporation agreement either. The controlling document for a corporation is referred to as the corporate bylaws. Right? They're going to serve the same function as a partnership agreement. It is going to detail the relationship between the owners, the relationship between the owners and the company, and who gets to make what decisions and when. It will also detail when meetings are going to need to take place and who is responsible for keeping up with those meetings, as well as how you're going to be allowed to sell your shares or your stock. If you're not publicly traded, there are going to be restrictions. There are lots of SEC rules that begin to come into play as well. Those can also exist in partnerships, but they tend to not quite reach the size of corporations. So the question is, why do small companies form corporations? There are a whole slew of both tax benefits and detriments to every entity type that exists. And you need to remember that the corporation was the first entity that provided limited liability for all of the participants. LLCs are very new. LLPs are very new. LLLPs are even newer. So corporations were the favorite entity type decades ago because really there were no other options if you wanted to limit your liability in any meaningful way. So corporations are great for big entities, but for small guys, I would advise that you talk to the CPA because they're going to know more about the specific, we'll call them tax matrix benefits that may exist for you on that front. We will continue to cover corporations next week as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about ownership structure, specifically how income is taxed. Another bite for corporations are that double taxation does exist. There is a way to mitigate that. But that's what you need to know is that because we are treating the corporation as an actual separate legal person from you, they are going to have their own separate legal taxes that are due at both the state and federal level unless specific exemption can apply and an election is made. And we will talk about that probably 2 weeks from now. So I thank you for joining me. I hope you found this useful, or if not, at least enjoyable. Be sure to leave comments below, and if you are watching in WeChat, you can leave it in thread. As always, I'm available online via email. So if you would, just keep those comments coming. Thank you.